Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio at Itron Utility Week. I'm joined now by Jim Dempsey, who's the Executive Business Development Manager at Panasonic. Jim, welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome to this big stage. It's a first for us, but and one of the things I want to say, anybody listening to this, if you've got any questions, see my colleague over there and she can bring them up to me as well. But Jim, we were preparing for this interview off air. And you're from the sort of mobility division of Panasonic.
Okay.
And before we dive into the guts of things, what you guys are showing here, I wanted you to give us an idea of what the megatrends are in mobility, because a lot has changed since we called it maybe field service, right? We've given it a bit of a new name, a lot of things have happened, but so in your words, can you tell us what you guys are seeing at Panasonic?
Sure, absolutely. And there has been a lot of change in the industry. And really, if you look at this industry, I also cover many other industries. So, the trends seem to be in twofold. One is the demographic of the user base. So, regardless of industry, what we're finding is the Gen X and the millennials are starting to become more and more a part of the current workforce, while the baby boomers are starting to move out. So, certainly with that, we're seeing a dynamic with the technology into things. So, the newer millennials, as opposed to the baby boomers, are much more comfortable with technology, much more versed in touchscreen type applications. So what we're seeing now is a shift, right, to the users having higher expectations of the IT department.
So what that, to paraphrase, what that is doing is it's challenging the usability, because those workers are looking for something that's as easy to use as their iPhone or whatever it is. So there's a lot more challenge. We're going away from those green screens where you have to type in a bit of code to run things. And how big is that challenge, or is it just one of those things that we can do that now and it's expected?
That's when we talk to a lot of our customers, particularly in this industry, it's seemingly an easy thing. We'll just give you iPhones or consumer grade devices and we'll just upgrade our application, but there's a lot more to that when you talk about an enterprise environment versus a consumer environment. So certainly for companies like Itron, they are updating their applications right now to be able to support these newer technologies. But on the customer side, there's a lot of user training, there's security implications, there's a lot more that goes into implementing that kind of technology. So both on the user side, the IT department, as I mentioned, used to bring the technology to the employees. Now the employees are pushing the IT department to deploy, touchscreen devices, tablets, handhelds, non-keyboard based devices. So it's really twofold.
And we'll come on to that a little bit later, because again, in this context, we're also dealing with critical infrastructure, right? So that brings another dynamic into it. But what are some of the other megatrends that you're seeing from the mobility side as well?
Yeah, I mean, really from the form factor perspective, the old paradigm was kind of a one-size-fits-all. You'd get a laptop and you just give it to all your workers, regardless really of what they were doing. What we're seeing now is, certainly with what we do in the market space, is it's a purpose-built device. So where a person in the past may have needed a handheld but was using a laptop, now that person can have a laptop, the other person who needs a tablet can have that tablet, and then the people who still need the laptops can have those. So we're seeing organizations now, instead of making a one-size-fits-all decision, they're making purpose-built decisions for each of the use cases for their workers.
And what does that enable an organization to do as well? Because if I think about it as well, so you say, all right, okay, for this execution we need a form factor like this. Can you just bring it to life a little bit, based on your
Sure.
experience? I mean, okay, you might not be able to mention any customers, but you can say that, hey, we were asked to build this and it solved this problem.
Yeah, so I think one of the immediate benefits to having technology like this is it allows the users to have that, where the point of activity is, the point of service, to have access to all the critical information that they need at that time to do their job effectively. So in service organizations, you talk about time to first fix, fixing on the first call. Certainly in a utility type environment, you may be dealing with some sort of environmental hurricane, tornado, where you have literally power is down, water's out. So the critical need to have that person to get to the site as efficiently as they can, to have all the tools necessary to accomplish their mission or job at that point, is critical. Because as good as any application is, if they get to the site and they don't have access to the application, the application's of no use.
Exactly, and then this puts us neatly into one of the other megatrends that we discussed in preparation of this call, is this ability to push knowledge from a central resource out. Can you talk a little bit more about that as well? Because it's getting a whole lot easier to have on the devices cameras, videos, and so the amount of information that you can capture, I mean, it's stating the obvious, is very rich, but also the communication that you can get back to the expert is also equally rich. And what's that doing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually an interesting trend that we're seeing. So, obviously with the mobile device being on site, that user can now access information. But the very interesting thing we're seeing right now is the remote expert that you mentioned, where a service tech may go out to make a repair, and that tech may not be familiar with this piece of equipment that they're standing in front of. They can now, with these new technologies, initiate a Skype, if you will, or a webcam session with a senior technician back at the office who can walk them through. The other thing that we're seeing, which is interesting, is augmented reality. So where you can take the camera of a device that recognizes what it's looking at, and then it starts peeling back the onion, so to speak, of the device to say, okay, here's where, for what you need to do, here's where that is, and it steps them through in a visual way how to make that repair.
And that whole augmented reality, and in the gaming world, VR and everything, I mean, that is very, very topical at the moment. But how easy is it to do? Because people say we've got to digitize and then put it on, and you look at some of the use cases in this industry as well, a substation or whatever. These are very, very complex things. Sure. So how are you guys working with your partners in order to be able to do that? Do you get involved in that side at all, or are you just, look, we'll just do the device for you, have someone else figure out how you push that?
And I think that's one of the challenges our customers do in a very complex environment, certainly the Itron environment. There's a lot of complex equipment out there. So the first step is more on the customer side and the Itron side, being able to electronically take those manuals, right, and schematics and put them in a format that's usable, right, on a device. So that typically will fall more to the customer, the Itron side, but we have a staff of engineers and software folks that we have to work in combination with them to make sure that the way in which those forms are being brought into the electronic world can be rendered appropriately on our devices. So once they've got a lot of that digitization done, then our engineers will help to make sure that the cameras are working properly, that the screens are rendering schematics properly. So it's kind of a handshake there that we have.
And on that side as well, are you seeing that one of the other things, and you talked about it a little bit, that we're getting more millennials into the business. Not sure about that word, but anyway, you know what I mean. And but on the flip side, you've also got an aging workforce, and in this industry, components are in for 30, 40-year life cycles. Are you also seeing people sort of digitizing that knowledge so that when people can come out, we aren't at risk of losing all of those skills? They're being captured by the utilities.
Yeah, and that's one of the advantages, I think, of the newer technology, in that all the activity being captured at the job site, at the point of activity, is being fed back to the system. So a lot of that knowledge base that, say, the older generation of workers has accumulated is now able to be shared, because it can be captured and fed back to the system and reused, by other workers within the organization.
And that then brings us into where we are today. So we've kind of described some of those big trends and what we're seeing today. And we touched on the form factors, but also it's one of those things where, again, we're dealing with critical infrastructure here at the end of the day. And the more we digitize, the more vulnerabilities are brought in. And one of the things that we talked about off air, and I'm not going to say for you, I'll let you say it, which is a particular key piece for Panasonic. We got to make sure that those endpoints are secure as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how Panasonic is approaching that?
Sure, absolutely, and that's I guess the IoT, IoE, Internet of Everything.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of different names to it, but it's certainly as you expose your network to capture that critical data, it becomes a smart edge device. That's good because I can send data down, but it's also an entry point into the network. So one of the things that we do, because we focus on enterprise class technology, is we make sure that our devices are built so that they're designed from the ground up as a layered security approach, from hardware to software to the network, so that organizations that are deploying these devices can be sure that, number one, they're not being accessed by the wrong people or adding a hole to the network that can then get compromised. We see it a lot across a lot of industries, but that's one thing that differentiates an enterprise company, which we are, versus a lot of the consumer technologies that people are playing with that aren't really designed to add that level of security to their systems.
And also one of the other things, and it's when I did the interviews with folks who are manufacturing smart meters and so on, there's a lot of talk about that as well. It's about this consumerization of components, where actually, yes, I'm just the assembler, but the components come from a million different manufacturers. Well, a million is an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So there's that diversification of the supply chain. How do you guys control that? Because we talked a little bit about off-air, but it'd be quite nice for you to kind of bring that to life a little bit as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges that as an IT organization, an enterprise company, you're challenged with many different things, one of which is just simple image management. And the images can change based on the components that you have within the devices. So in a consumer world, they're changing their components at will just because of their supply chain. They're updating the devices every 90 days. And as an IT organization within an enterprise customer, the last thing you want are multiple images. So one of the things that we do is, and we're unique, we're the only manufacturer in the industry left that does this. We call ourselves a core component manufacturer. So we make the parts for our devices, we design them. We actually have robots that build the parts for our devices. We assemble them, because durability, as we see it in enterprise grade, is from inside out. And then we maintain them as well. So when you look at how we differentiate ourselves, and the reason why a lot of customers use our devices for 5, 6, 7 years in very tough environments, is we have less than a 2% failure rate because we control our entire supply chain. And we keep things stable for our enterprise customers, which is something that they want and they struggle with when they try and implement consumer technology.
And all the components are manufactured by you, so you've got that visibility. So on that side of things, and let me ask you a bigger question now, because you're saying that, okay, we're the only people who do that, but you're not the only people who manufacture the tablets, so it's a competitive market space, and people are always looking at costs and price. So how do you think we need to actually put this type of security more center stage? Cybersecurity is one of those things, it's a bit like insurance. No one wants to talk about it until they need it, right? So how does this actually start becoming the DNA of the fabric as we start getting more edge devices, more things talking on the internet? As much as I loathe that expression, but you know what I mean.
Well, I think from and we've talked, and Gartner Group started back in the 90s. You look about total cost of ownership. So when we look at just the sheer procurement of technologies, the procurement piece of any technology is really the smallest piece. What it actually costs, it's all the other things on top, all the services, all the security, all the management of those technologies that really accumulate 80% or more of the total cost of ownership of the device. So when we look at how our devices are going to be deployed, we're building them so that, number one, they're going to last for a long period of time. They're going to be compatible with the customer software environment, their security environment. And they're also going to be able to bridge not only the older technology but newer technologies. So really when we talk to customers about what we're doing and how to look at some of these technologies, they're making decisions not just for today, but they're making their decision to implement a system that will be there for 3, 5, 10 years. So when we talk to customers, we try and make sure that we're recommending an approach that, hey, you need to have an enterprise class solution, no matter what the technology is that you're deploying.
And so you just said, we're looking at things 3, 5, 10 years. We've been writing about the fact that actually, this industry is changing. The pace of change is getting faster. When I first started reporting on this industry 4 years ago, people said, oh, well, if Edison arrived, they'd recognize the grid. And, a lot of commentators are saying, well, that will not be true very soon. How, and this leads us on to some of the future tech that's coming down.
Sure.
How do you actually make it so that these mobility devices are fit for purpose 10 years down the road? It must be very hard to look 10 years ahead, right?
It is. And it becomes more rapid as we move forward too. But if you look at the evolution of our company, we started with laptops. 4 years ago, we went into the tablet space. Now we're in the handheld space. So we continue to adapt as the market is adapting and changing and technologies are becoming more prevalent. But the next phase of what we're looking at is a lot of what we call the wearable technologies. So certainly offering the different form factors we offer today allows us to go to the purpose-built use case scenario. But Now we're looking at how does augmented reality, as we mentioned, how does the visual, the voice, how does that play right out there in these market spaces? And one of the things we try not to do is we don't try and take a technology and look for a problem. We try and solve a problem with technology. So these are use cases that we're working through with Itron as well as their customer base to say.
So how's that wearable technology coming into it as well? Because in the mainstream press, it's all about kids with watches and T-shirts that talk to you and all, that sort of stuff. But let's bring it down to this world. What are some of the things you're experimenting with? Because you must be looking at this stuff.
Sure. Yeah. One of the concepts that we're looking at right now is a mobile computer that's the size, about the deck of cards that you'll have wear on your belt or just carry with you, and all the peripheral devices that you may drive to that, your keyboard, your monitor, mouse. When you get into your vehicle, your GPS, a screen in the vehicle. Even on site with your VR glasses or any kind of voice activation, that'll all be driven off of this one little black box, right? That will be able to do all of that. But
so that has the smarts that then allows you to abstract the form factors, and
exactly.
The smarts are all.
So it'll have a lot of connectivity options to it, so whether it's Bluetooth, NFC, Wi-Fi, 4G radios. But the other point to that piece is that it's going to be a secure PC. It's not going to be, a lot of these consumer technologies which you mentioned are not secured. So this will have to be, number one, again, everything we do enterprise, it's going to have to be a device that can meld into a customer's environment, because this is a device that will be used not only in utilities, but with public safety, police, fire, military, government, healthcare, and even retail for PCI compliance. So as we look across all those industries, whatever we do from a wearable perspective has to be enterprise grade from a security perspective.
So you're effectively looking at building your own mini platform at the edge, where you have something with all the smarts. That way, does that then make it easier for you to deploy the different form factors? I'm making it very simple so that you can give me the complicated solution. I'm almost thinking back to the days when people started talking about dumb terminals, right?
Yep.
At the moment, there's a lot of processing power in these screens, but if you abstract that to one device, it must be easier to make these dumber, which means they've got less vulnerability, and you're trying to secure everything through one device. I keep doing this. I haven't got one, but
Well, it's funny you mention that, because technology is a technology pendulum, and where we're back to, you mentioned the green screen. If you think about the web, we have edge devices that are running browsers that are really light computers, so to speak, and they're hitting a database back at the home office, which, if you think about it, that was the green screen with the mainframe years ago. So with this wearable computer type technology, it does allow us to mix and match a lot of different things. It maybe what we're connected to is just a screen in the vehicle. It's a dumb screen, but once the device pairs to it, then it's now a smart screen, so to speak. Same thing when I walk back into my office. All my office peripherals, my printers automatically connect to that device. So it does give us a lot of flexibility in looking at how we and how customers will use these devices, because certainly we don't want to impede the operation. We wanted to enhance the operation and make that worker more efficient when they get to the site.
And so we're kind of coming to the end of our time here. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the most complex form factor that you've been asked to manufacture? Not just in this industry, but because you work across a lot of industries.
I think it's a new form factor for us. It's a 2-in-1, so it's the detachable, keyboard, tablet type technology. Where, that if you think about just a consumer grade device, it's not that hard to do, right? Because you're not really worried about the durability of the connectors and the durability of the device, quite frankly. So we just launched a product called the Toughbook CF20. That is a 2-in-1. It's the first rugged 2-in-1 device in the market right now, and that one took a lot. It was a lot of feedback from customers. A lot of what we do is we do customer forums to help us design our future products. So that one has just come to market, and it's had tremendous success in terms of customer excitement. Looking at that as the next generation.
And what was the use case that was driving that? Because again, if I'm going to be very simplistic, I'll say it can't be that hard, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's manufacturing these things. So let's not go there, but let's focus on the use case. What was the use case that drove that?
So the use case there was we have a lot of applications in the utility space still have a lot of keyboard input, but they want the option of having a mobile tablet. So when they're on site, they can do the tablet, get back in the vehicle, I want to put it back in the cradle, and then I do my typing. So we were being asked by customers, they said, I really like the laptop because I have all the functionality with the keyboard, but I really want a tablet. Do you have something that kind of could bridge that gap and be both? And that's really what the Toughbook 20 does. It allows them to have a clamshell, if you will, laptop experience when they need that, but it also allows them to take it mobile in a tablet format. And certainly Windows 10, with a 2-in-1 allows you to go from tablet to PC mode.
It's pretty easy, but it's interesting that it came from that. Jim, we have come to the end of our time. Jim, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you as well for watching Itron Utility Week, Engerati Studio, and many more interviews to come.